All right, great. So quick orientation to that. So as mentioned, learning modules. Well, holy moly, we got a lot going on in here. So we're going to need to set these learning modules as being viewable. And in addition, we'll then have to go in and change the quizzes and exams. So I'm going to show you something that can be really, really helpful, which is a little bit of a cheat. It's a tool that not a lot of folks know about initially. So if I scroll down here, I got some options. The control panel is kind of that whole list of things that only the instructor has access to. Now, in each of these areas, there's a list of different tools. The content collection is basically your collection of files. It's your file folder in Blackboard. And so, for instance, you see this up here is a PDF, right? The background check PDFs. These PDFs are attached here, but they're physically saved. They're not a link to an outside source like a URL. These we saved to this device, to this tool, I guess we'll call it, and inside that saving, it saves it in the course. And so the course has its own set of files, and then you have files that you can access in Blackboard that are not tied to a particular course. So those will be listed with your username. So that's the content you can access that's just for you, and you explore it as much as you need to. Then we have the course content. So if I click here, I'm going to see a list of all the files that are currently in this course. And since it's been copied, all the files have been put in previous courses as subfolders. Good luck with that. And then all courses content and all organization content are broader folders. And so if you have a folder, say we have a document that everybody in EMS classes need to access, well, we can put that in the all courses content, and that can tie to all the different sections. All organizations content can be divided by school or whatever. We don't use these very often, and I don't save a whole lot in my content because I utilize the SharePoint and OneDrive to save my files. This is personally for you. If you have stuff that has student grades on it, it has to go to SharePoint at some point for our long-term storage. So if you put something in here, don't forget to export it. That's not where we're going, though. We're going to go to Course Tools with all these wonderful tools. I guess I'll just go through some of the ones that we, by name, that we actually use frequently. And then we're going to look at a few specifically to get this job done. So yeah, let's do that. Some of these I haven't used, so I'm not going to talk a whole lot about them. Achievements, I haven't used it so much, but it's a means of helping align your class. Announcements, you can click here for announcements and getting some settings. If I scroll up here, those students have the ability to see announcements, and I'll go through announcements here in a little bit. Attendance, you can utilize this if you have attendance rubrics that you'd like to set up. Not something that I use very often. Basic LTI tools, not something I use much unless you have a publisher content that integrates with it. Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. So this is access to the settings and to the actual, what I mentioned earlier was essentially a stripped down version of video conferencing. Blogs, settings, bookshelf, not something we use a lot. If you have a book from Cengage, you can utilize that here. Contents, I can't talk, contacts. Course calendar, we saw that, but you can access the tools and settings for it here. Course messages, I would avoid this because you want your stuff to go through email. There is a messaging system like an internal email just for the class, but you'd have to log in to interact with it every time and to check it and all that good stuff. So we just have CNM's email linked to this right now. And so when you go up here, CNM email is your messaging. All right. Date management. We're going to actually dive into this a little bit and play around. Discussion board settings, we're not using them, but you can find those there. EAC visual data, this is for assessing how well your class is performing. And so you can look at how well did a test perform, how well did a question perform, look at statistics based on all those things. And it does it in a pretty nice format, a little different than CNM's kind of inherent means of reviewing exams, which is called item analysis. So this makes it a lot easier. That's a little bit something for later, but definitely something you want to play around with at some point. Glossary, you can build one if you'd like. Goals, journals, those are tools for alignment in the journal tool. Obviously, we've got a couple publishers here, so they have integrations that can work with these if necessary. I've not used this. I don't find that it's very mobile compatible at all, so I've never kind of dove in. Respondus Lockdown Browser we will use. If you're giving an exam and the exam is in a computer lab, you want to make sure that students can't open up a browser and search for the answer. And so the way that we lock down their browser is using Respondus Lockdown Browser. We'll use this when we do our exam settings a little bit later. Excuse me. It's very important though that you use this because it makes the student take their exam in a specific application that looks like a browser and communicates directly with Blackboard when the student logs in, but it doesn't allow opening other tabs. And in fact, you can set it so that if the student tries to exit so they can open up a Chrome page and start searching for the answer, it will submit their exam. So there's lots of functionality to it, and it's a little bit of a means of deterring folks from trying to cheat, at least in that aspect. Rubrics are great to help guide your grading. They're an advanced grading tool. Not all courses are using them. Safe Assign checks for plagiarism if you have any papers that students are going to submit. I talked about the email. Test surveys and polls. This is where all our test questions bank is, essentially, and all the tests can be edited and found there. Let's see. The rest, I think, is not so much that important. So the most important thing for our discussion right now is date management.